Today we're being joined by former AFL player at the North Melbourne and Melbourne Football Club and the current head of footy of development at the Essendon AFLW side. Ben, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Coops.
No worries. Now, Ben, obviously you played footy for a very long time. You're only 32 still, so you're very young as well. So, obviously you played footy. What kind of started the football journey originally from the playing side of things?
Thanks, mate. It's nice to hear I'm still young. I still feel young for sure. What started it all off? I always played footy and lots of sports from a very young age. So I loved sport, really enjoyed football. My uncle played football in the AFL as well. So my mum's brother played with Collingwood and Fitzroy in the 80s and 90s. So I sort of had that as a background, particularly my mum's side of the family, lots of football played. So that was probably the start of it, and I played all the way through school footy and at the Devonport Footy Club in their underage programs. And then it probably took me a while though to realise that playing professional sport at the elite level would even be a consideration for me as a potential opportunity.
Sure. So you obviously played 175 games in your AFL career, Ben. We'll go all the way back to draft time. Obviously, it's way different probably to what it is now. How was that period in terms of getting recruited by the Roos? Did you ever think it was a possibility back then? Did you have any indication at that point that North at that time was going to be the club? How was all that time?
Yeah, well, it was my fourth attempt at a draft. I did my ACL in my draft year when I was 17. And then played a couple of years in Tassie. After that, and then it was 2013, I decided to move to Werribee Footy Club. Mark Stone was one of the recruiters at that point, and he had a couple of coffees with me over the course of a couple of years and eventually convinced me to come over and have a trial. And I very much got him to thank for getting me over to Werribee. Had a year under Scott West as coach there and really enjoyed that time at Werribee. And North Melbourne were an affiliate side, or wherever you were, North Melbourne's affiliate side at that time. So I was playing footy with Magic Door and Mason Wood and some other names at that point that were sort of just starting out in the league and coming through Werribee's program. So I suppose under North Melbourne's eye a little bit. Had a chat to a few clubs after having a reasonable year that year, and was lucky enough that North Melbourne took me with their selection, number 47. It was in 2013.
For sure, it must always be special. Like I talk to so many people, they always say the players that get drafted at any level, whether it's AFLW or AFL, and they always say no matter the draft pick, it doesn't matter. You're on a list no matter what. Doesn't matter the attention you get. You're on a spot. You're on a list. You're on a list.
Yeah, spot on. That was definitely how I felt. I'd had 4 attempts at the draft, and to eventually get that opportunity, it was definitely one I went into the league and I knew that I didn't want to give up that opportunity that I've been given. And I was very fortunate to walk into North Melbourne at a time where, it was probably fortuitous timing to be a key forward coming into their program. And a lot of things, probably went my way in a lot of ways to give me opportunities early days. And then, I was pretty happy with the career I was able to forge off the back of that.
For sure. And obviously wearing the jumper number 50, it's obviously a very unique number, and you kind of made it known to what it is now, Ben. Obviously a lot of people, every time they talk about the number 50, your name will get brought up because obviously it's not a common number, or these days it's now starting to come a trend a little bit. Do you take some credit for that now, that a lot of people are wanting these higher numbers now?
Don't know if I take credit for that. The 50 was interesting. I never actually cared much about numbers. Which is one of the reasons why I took on 50. So when I went to my first league club in Tasmania to play, I was playing basketball at the same time, got to pre-season a bit late, and the property steward handed me a jumper when I walked in, to pre-season pretty late in the piece, and 50 was the only one that fit. So I thought, it's a nice round number, I'll keep that. And I thought, well, wherever I go, no one's going to fight me for that number, so I should be able to keep it. And it managed to be that way throughout the career. So it's a bit of a funny one, but I ended up with that.
For sure. Obviously, you played 130 games for North Melbourne and 45 for the Demons. What are some of your fondest footy memories, in particular games, any milestone games, anything in particular that you still cherish now?
Oh, I mean, I think of the grand final straight away
Mm,
with Melbourne. That experience of playing in a team that, particularly towards the back end of that year, were a bit of a juggernaut, and to be just
mm,
part of that, and to be able to feel like I was a part of it too, and to really feel like I belonged at that
mm,
level. I probably had, the previous 12 months or so had struggled a bit, just in terms of my confidence and
mm,
feeling like I could play at the level still at that point. And I was really proud of the way that I went about my football. I got dropped in the middle of that year, played a couple of games in the ones, got dropped, and had to go back to the VFL for 6 or 8 weeks and really
mm,
sort of built my game back from the ground. And so the fact that I was able to perform well towards the back end of that year, that's
mm,
that's probably my proudest moment in football, is that I was able to come from a position of, uh, you know, back against the wall, I suppose, and career in the balance in some ways, and was able to peg
mm,
it back and play some really good footy. So yeah, that obviously, and and finals are always the ones you think about because, big crowds, big
mm,
moments. I definitely think back to the 2014 elimination final against Essendon, and we came from about
mm,
40 or 41 points down, and yeah, that experience of kicking a goal and having such a big crowd, uh, and it was my 9th ever game of football at the AFL level. So
mm.
that was the first time I remember being really in awe of playing out on a ground in a big stadium, big comeback. So I definitely remember that one as being
Mm.
pretty cool as well.
Sure, you hear about now these days so many players that name that comes to mind is Darcy Wilmore. They played their first games in their career or very early in their final series. Do you feel any more additional pressure? I know it was 9 games in, but still it's really early in. You just kind of breaking into that side, and then gee boom, just like that, it's a final series on top of everything else.
Yeah, I don't know if I felt pressure. I think I was still definitely finding my feet as a player at that point.
Mm,
But I was really fortunate. I had Drew Petrie was playing at that point and was a real sort of mentor for me early days,
mm,
and a great football person to have as a mentor when I first got into the football world. So the transition was probably made easier by the fact that I had he and Aaron Black was there at that time, so I was probably
mm,
taking the third defender most weeks, which sort of
mm,
helped my easing into the role and easing into that position. But yeah, it was, you could definitely get overawed by an occasion like that. Um,
mm,
and I still think back, and I can almost put myself on that ground and feel the energy of the crowd,
mm,
particularly in that elimination final. That I still get the sensations like I'm there, which is, it's pretty cool that you're
mm.
able to go back and have that experience. I'm sure
Yeah.
um, fans would be able to have a similar experience to that, of being in a stadium, and you go back to one of your favorite moments or favorite games, and be
Mm.
able to feel what it's like to be part of a big crowd. That's one of my favorite parts of you know being able to have had the experience of playing elite sport.
For sure. And in those 130 games at North Melbourne, you also kicked 287 goals. So a 4-time leading goalkeeper at the Roos, 4 years straight, pretty much, Ben. That's a pretty damn impressive. And then, it's something that not many people can do these days, especially if you've got a bunch of good key position forwards or small forwards around you as well.
Yeah, we probably had a few years there. 2016 was probably the first one where I took more of a centre stage role, I suppose, in the
Mhm.
forward line. I was starting to learn a little bit more about the game. Was coming into my prime years, I suppose, in terms of where my body was at. I'd had a few
Yeah.
pre-seasons at AFL level. The following few years were definitely in a rebuild phase as a club
Yeah.
at Melbourne. So uh, we weren't winning a whole lot of games, but yeah, it was sort of that development phase. So I look back on those years, and I really feel very privileged to have had that experience, but
Mm.
also recognizing that a lot of things, I think I worked really hard for the position that I got to and the position I got my body to, but also a lot of things fell my way in terms of being, like I said, coming into the team at the right time, having a really having a coach that believed in me with Brad Scott at that time, and a game plan that probably catered to the way that I played football well. So all of those things come together, and I think we've got to take this into consideration when we assess players and where their careers end up. A lot of the time it is the situation of the team, the game plan, other players around them, and how does that affect their ability to perform? Because you need a lot to fall into place to create a really strong player who's able to play to their strengths at AFL level. It works for some better than others in different circumstances. So I felt very fortunate that I had a set of circumstances that probably played to my strengths pretty well.
Sure. Then in 2020, obviously, probably a tough year for yourself personally, probably obviously being you mentioned in and out of the side, and then the transition over to Melbourne. Did you kind of feel like in that year at some point that you thought, okay, I've had a great part of my career so far here at North, but it's time to kind of change things up a little bit, and well, it ended up working?
Yeah, it was a funny one that year. We had... I was coming out of contract at the end of 2020, and the end of the previous year, 2019, we sort of started discussions, and like most clubs and players do, you start a fair way apart, and we're sort of in the process of finding something that worked for both me and the footy club. That's kind of how contract negotiations work. But we had COVID hit. We had a change of coach and also a change of general manager of football at that time. So when I was having those discussions, we didn't even have a GM of football in place. And then COVID hit, and they had a contract freeze. So we literally were forced to freeze any talks that we were having. Now, in the meantime, we had a fair bit change within our club. We went up to the hubs, and we weren't travelling well as a team. I didn't have a great start to that year, and then I got injured in the middle of that year. So when the contract freeze ended, a lot had changed in circumstances, both for myself, where my body was at, where the club was at, and where they wanted to go. So the contract negotiations that we'd been having prior to that period of time were pretty much null and void. And that was what I was told by the club, was we've decided to go in a different direction. We think that you should explore your opportunities elsewhere. So, that's what we ended up doing. I was very fortunate to land at Melbourne at a really good time. But I think I don't necessarily blame anyone for how things went down. At North Melbourne, it was a really tough year for a lot of people, and I still watch North Melbourne with interest even today. I've got some players there that I played with through those years, and I really want to see some success for them. So, it's definitely a club I keep a close eye on, and definitely still feel a connection to.
That's good. I was going to say, so is there any disappointment though in that time, considering that's, where the journey started, and potentially at that point you mentioned there was a bit apart, and then, was the contract freeze and everything like that. Was it a bit disappointing though that you were kind of told to move on?
Definitely at the time. Yeah. I always felt like I was going to be a one club player. But that's kind of how things work. Circumstances do change. Clubs change their path and the way they want to head. It's just how it played out. But I don't hold any animosity against the club or not involved in that. That's just part of how footy works.
That's right. Now, in terms of the move to Melbourne, obviously it ended up working really well because your first year you win a premiership. But how did that move to Melbourne come about once you were told what you just said about North? How did you come to being Melbourne as a club?
Yeah, so we went through a process of talking to a couple of different clubs, and Melbourne were pretty clear. It was pretty clear that Melbourne, I thought, were heading in a great direction. They seemed to be really keen to get me in to play a role for the team, and I was really excited about that opportunity. So it didn't sort of take long to make that decision, make that call, and I was very fortunate that the club sort of backed me in to play the role they wanted to play. So yeah, I moved across to Melbourne and had some injuries early on. In the preseason, I injured my knee and took some time to get back, I suppose, back playing to start with, and then back into the team and sort of build some form up again. So, it was it probably took a while to settle in there. But in terms of from my perspective more broadly, I felt a lot more sure of myself and sure of who I was. And I found that settling in at the club didn't take too long. It was a club led by Max Gawn, who's very much a leader who encouraged everyone to be themselves. And, the club sort of takes all comers, no matter who you are. And I felt like I really related to that message. And I think it was one of Max's strengths as a leader.
Sure. And then obviously in that first year, you mentioned about the injuries at the start of the preseason, and the best thing that could ever happen from a footballer's point of view is winning a premiership in that first year at a new club. How was that time? Obviously, again, a different time as well in terms of where the footy was being played. But how was that grand final for you against the Bulldogs?
It was an incredible experience. We didn't have all of the grand final parade or anything like that. We were sort of locked up not locked up, but we were kept in a compound, I suppose, over in Perth, and spent a few weeks over there during the finals. My wife and kids were back at home in Melbourne. They were having a pretty rough time, so they were doing their best to be really supportive to me. And that from that side of things, I'm really thankful for my family and what they did to allow me to go over and have that experience. I know that it's still. I know how much it hurt my wife in a way that she was sort of there for all the ups and downs, and then wasn't there in the biggest moment. So that's definitely a regret of mine that she wasn't there for that. But the experience of playing in that grand final, I remember being incredibly nervous the night before. I had a diary that I'd sort of write footy related stuff in, and the night before, I remember sort of writing down all of my fears and everything that, basically everything that was going through my head that could go wrong the next day. And then almost writing down the conversation with myself, like telling myself, like arguing back, saying, yeah, you're thinking these things, but, actually you don't need to worry about this. So that was probably something I remember doing. And then the game day, I remember going out and doing the warm up, and you sort of had your set shot goal kicking before the game and running between all of the stage setups and everything. It was very, very bizarre and very different. But I remember pre-game, I think I only missed one set shot at goal. I had about 18 or 20, so I thought, all right, I'm on here. I know what I'm doing. So that was nice to have that experience. And I took a minute too, just in that warm up, to just sit and have a look around at everything and take everything in. And I'm really glad I did that, because again, I feel like I can take myself back to that spot and feel the feelings I was feeling at that time. And it's a really important memory for me. And then clearly the celebrations and the comeback that we had.
Yes.
I don't think there's been many teams that have been able to have, a 100-point turnaround within the space of a quarter and a half. So being out there for that, contributing to that, but also being out there for that when that was happening was just, it was pretty jubilant vibe. It was fun.
Definitely, I'm sure it would be. And that's, you could understand for some people that may have thought at that point, as you said, we can still come back if you're a Melbourne fan and then say, it's going to be tough for me considering it's a grand final and everything on top of that. And then you have that another 100-point turnaround overall. And it's just like, what the hell just happened in that half?
Yeah, I remember coming off. It was halfway through the third quarter, and I think we were down by 15 or 19 points or something. And I went,
Mm.
everything feels calm, but we've got to get going here or else it's not going to
Mm.
happen. We're going to walk off the ground and we're going to feel like it was a missed opportunity because we'd flown through the finals, really. Like, we smacked the Cats. We'd had a really good final series, and it just felt like the conditions were right for us. You know, we trained really well, everything was right for us. But I just remember thinking, this isn't going to happen for us. We're going to walk off, and it'll be a missed opportunity. So then the turnaround was unreal. It was some of the most fun I've had on a football field. Sort of that last 10 or 15 minutes when we knew we had it won, and just waiting for that siren to go.
For sure. And then obviously last year, obviously announcing your retirement, last year, was that a tough decision to make? Because I was going to also mention on top of that, you were starting to venture into some AFLW coaching and helping out with some of the AFLW players at Melbourne and obviously now at the Bombers. So has that always been something too that was in the back of your mind while making your retirement, knowing that you're trying to venture into the women's footy space, whether that's in coaching or other roles?
Probably a two-parter there. I suppose with the retirement in the first place, the last few years were tough in terms of where my body was at, particularly my knee. I had, like I said, my ACL injury when I was 17 and probably had some issues throughout my career associated with that. And it got to the point where I would train or play and just barely make it for the next training session or next game. Taking anti-inflammatories to get through all the time and having fluid drained out of my knee pretty regularly. And I'd have games where I got home and I'd barely be able to climb up the stairs to put my kids to bed. So it just got to the point where I went, actually, I'm battling against something I'm not able to put my best out anymore. And it was, in a way, it was tough to come to that decision because my mind still felt like I wanted to do the things that I knew I could do at my best.
Yeah.
I wasn't able to get to that point. And when you get to the AFL level, you need to be able to train to a really high level to keep your body, to maintain the ability to do what you can do. And I probably wasn't able to get myself out to train enough at really high intensity without pain and without discomfort that, it was affecting my performance ability. So, and now I'm pretty happy I made that decision because I play a game or two a week of social mixed basketball now. That's my run around, and my knees still don't really cope with that very well. So I don't think I'll be able to run around on footy fields. But yeah, the women's space I've been really passionate about for a long time. I remember going and watching the exhibition matches between the Bulldogs and Melbourne before the AFLW was a thing, and I put my hand up to go down to help out with Melbourne University's VFLW training sessions. They trained out at Arden Street when I was training there, so I'd hang around after training and just help out wherever I could. A few of the younger players that are now coming through and are AFLW players were there at that time. So it was, it was sort of 16-year-olds running around and holding marking bags for them or kicking footies back out. Caitlin Greiser, Bess Keeney, Isabel Huntington, players like that I sort of saw from a really young age. So that was pretty exciting. And I've loved watching the growth of the league and just to be able to give. I'm a big believer that everyone should have the opportunity to enjoy sport. And I think one of the things from a professional point of view, the league and the AFL and clubs should be really setting the example for all the rest of us that want to enjoy playing sport at the community level, because 99.9% of people don't play elite sport. They play community level sport. So we need to be setting the example of how we value girls and women in sport at the top level. So because that's who's going to get the effect of that. It's, girls, my daughters, my 6 and 4-year-old daughters going into the football club and being just as valued for their experience of playing sport and being part of a club as if my daughters were boys. So I want that experience for everyone. I think that's just the way our society should be. Take pay and revenue and revenue streams and conditions of play. Take all of those things aside, and I have strong opinions on those. But at the base level, what are we trying to do here? What are we trying to do as a society? We want everyone to have that experience of being able to belong, to be able to have fun playing sport. And so what my role in that was sort of being part of that change at the highest level, really showing my support outwardly. Positive thing that came out of that too was I just grew to love women's sport. I grew to love women's footy and being involved in it. I love watching the development of it, the progression of the game, the progression of players, the tenacity of players to keep coming back again and again and again. When they've had so many barriers thrown in their faces throughout their careers, coming from other sports back to football. I've loved watching that, and now I'm loving watching that 18-year-olds come in, be drafted, and dominating the competition because of the amount of extra resourcing that's been put into talent pathways and developing these girls from a young age. So, you can probably tell I'm passionate about it. It's and now getting the opportunity to work in that space, I'm still learning a lot. I've never been a coach, so there are bits of the coaching journey that I'm going to have to do a lot of learning in. But I think coming from the place of being really passionate about it, I hope is a really good start.
Sure, no, I definitely can agree to how passionate you are, because I've been at a lot of AFLW games myself. I went to 39 games last year, I think it was, off the top of my head. Nice. 39, so. And being a Saints fan, it doesn't matter if it's just a St Kilda game, I'd go to all. In fact, there was even at points where I would go to another game over a Saints game just to kind of like spread it out with all the teams. So you get to know them all, and I've got to know a fair few from every team. So that's another reason, a part of it. And it's just enjoyable. And I went to, even if you want to go another level, state league level, I've been to about 10 or so VFLW games last year. So, and then you got that with clashing with everything else. So it's try to go as most as I can, and then, obviously cover it as well as I do.
Good on you, mate. And this is probably turning the question on you. What do you love about women's?
I just love the engagement side of things. Like, if I want to compare it to AFL in terms of, I would rather honestly now go to the AFLW than AFL. I still go to AFL obviously, but I feel like the engagement bit, Ben, is so much better than the AFL. Like, you can communicate with the players pretty well from just a personal level, or you can go to the games, you can have a chat with them after the game, and it's it is what it is. I love that. Love being like, you can kind of feel a bit more involved there too. Like, you can be so close to the action, you can be on the fence, go in after the game, you can go chat to them and everything like that. Whereas the AFL, I feel like it's kind of like, you're there watching the game, it's great, and that's it. There's nothing else around it. Where the women's, I feel like there's a lot more around it where you can communicate. Just even like going to some of the trainings as well. Like, I've known a few players as well, so then I'll go see them, and then they go chat to you. And then, so I feel like it's a lot more involved, and everyone can get around it more, and a lot of people should get around it too.
Yeah, and it's interesting you say that. I think my taking my kids along to the women's footy has been fantastic too. I've like I said before, I've got 2 daughters, but particularly the youngest one, probably not at the stage where she can sit through a game very comfortably, but being able to go out to the community grounds and having lots of space for her to run around, and they can go and high five players after the game. It's pretty cool. It's not an experience you get in men's footy. And again, I'm like you. I love watching men's footy. I've watched plenty of it to start the season, but I am really excited about the growth of women's footy and what it means for for my daughters and for girls and women around the country that can enjoy seeing themselves at the highest level.
For sure. And obviously, while you were at Melbourne, I was doing some assisting of coaching and everything like that, and helping players out. One name that comes to mind, who was the captain of the Melbourne AFLW, so Kate Hall. What a terrific player in person she is as well. And must be great to see someone like Kate obviously dominate this competition. And probably one of the, you talk about the big names, and I was going to ask you about who you think the best player in the comps and that are. But obviously, you hear about the Mon Contis, Jazz Garner, Ash Riddell, Ebony Maroff, and rightfully so. But Kate, I feel like in that level gets underappreciated a fair bit for the work she puts in being captain. I know I've spoken to her and people in Melbourne as well, how much effort she would put in. I'm sure there's obviously more as well at other clubs, but the effort she puts in, and then to keep that high standard is pretty damn impressive, and for a while too.
Yeah, I think it speaks a lot to the character of Kate that she stepped into the shoes of Daisy Pearce as coach of Melbourne. I mean, they're pretty big shoes to fill, and she's done a great job of it. I think the program at Melbourne is a really positive one, and I loved being a part of it. I think mixed in here and the coaching panel, Shay Sloan's there. The coaches are all they run a great program, and Kate's part of that. She's certainly an elite player and has some attributes that really set her apart. Her ability to be so clean with the ball, to her little shimmy step that she does, and she showed that a couple times last year. But one of those players who seems to have to make time and space where there isn't any. So she's definitely. I would agree with you, underappreciated, and in that conversation for best players in the league for sure.
Now, speaking of best players in the league, Ben, who would you have in that spot? It's obviously a real tough one. I feel like you could raffle up fair few names, and that's a good problem to have. I think in the men's club, you could probably say narrow it down to 2 or 3, and then the women's one, I think it's better that you can make it up for debate where everyone's giving you different answers. That's probably a good thing.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, how long's your list? You got lots of players that have had a huge amount of impact. Ali Anderson, who's played some amazing seasons at Brisbane. I've loved watching, and I'm a bit biased because I've just started it at Essendon, but the couple of players to spring to mind there, Maddie Prasparkas, and I've loved seeing the growth of Georgia Nanscorn, who I coached at North Melbourne back when she was starting out. She came over from hockey, so had perhaps not the transferable skills necessarily of players that have come from soccer or come from basketball or sports like that. But one of the hardest workers you'll have, one of the great people in women's footy as well. She's just rocketed herself into being one of the best midfielders in the league after being delisted by North Melbourne after a couple of seasons. So I've loved watching her development. I love that she was right up there in the medal count last year.
Yes.
But Ebony Marinoff, Mon Conti as well was another one who I met when she was quite young, going through the system. I've loved watching her development. Yeah, you could go on and on.
Yeah, for sure. It just amazed me of how, for me personally, I choose Mon Conti for a few reasons, because you just turned 25 and already a 6-time best and fairest winner, premiership player, and I think 3 All-Australians, I think, and should have got 1 last year, but anyway. And then and what was the other one? And I think it was in the league BNF. It's amazing. She only just turned 25 and got all that already, and she's still got half a career at least to go.
Yeah, it's unbelievable, and having played basketball at the elite level too.
Yeah, that too. Yeah, Geelong United. Yeah,
to have that kind of resume, she's a special athlete. That's for sure.
For sure. Now, obviously, I must bring up one more thing about your AFL career, Ben. It'd be remiss of me not to bring this up. The set shot routine. Obviously, the long kick, and hey, it worked. How many comments did you get about that, even till now? Still get brought up. Even some of the girls that are now at Essendon, or even more you're at Melbourne, when you're doing goal kicking stuff, and they're like, you got the long run up. And how many times do people make coffee jokes saying, I'm going to go get a coffee while you line up or something?
Yeah. If I had $1, I'd be rich. It was this funny thing. I was always a ruckman growing up, so I never really played more purely as a forward until I moved to Victoria and played at Werribee when I was 20 years old. So I'd always been like a ruckman who sort of pinch hit or rested forward for 20 years of my life. So when I was kind of an older teenager, I suppose, I started to develop a bit more of a routine and something that worked for me. I'm quite process driven, as you can probably tell from the routine. It was something that made me feel comfortable to have this routine that was a bit unique and that was just mine. Look, it worked for me. It was pretty basic, really. I just told myself, run straight, kick straight, follow through straight, and the ball should go pretty straight. So, that was pretty much it. It was trying to keep it simple. I think, I didn't try to overkick the ball as well. It's probably I was never a really long kick, and I probably look at Silver at North Melbourne now, and the way he kicks goals. He was always a dead eye, even when he first got to the club. But it makes a huge difference. I mean, he's kicked 70 goals in a season, and a lot of it is, similar to me as well. Probably not high possession players necessarily, but if you make the most of it, 6 points is a lot better than one. So, he's another one I've loved watching his development into, a pretty amazing player at the highest level.
Sure, and another name that comes on since you mentioned Nick Larkey as well is Ben King's another one of primary, so not a high possession getter, but it seems to be now that yourself when you're playing, and obviously Nick Larkey as well, and Ben King, it's actually a good thing if you're getting 6 touches, but you're kicking 3 or 4 goals. Does it really matter if you get 15 or so if you're kicking 6 goals or 5 goals?
Yeah, 100%. I'm strongly of the opinion that you finish your work, you're a lot more valuable. So, that was one thing. I think Nick's done a great job of this in his times. He's put a lot of time and effort into it, and that was something I did particularly early days at North. Put a lot of hours into extra shots after training and making sure that I was super, super comfortable that I'd done this thing over and over and over again, and I knew exactly what I was going to do. So that in the situation where it's a game and a big crowd or a big moment, I was still able to just take myself back like it was training and do it again. So, Nick's clearly done the work on that, and it's paying dividends, which is pretty cool.
Sure. Now, I just want to mention one more thing about them while you're at Melbourne and kind of what's getting talked about all the time now. Obviously, Simon Goodwin obviously was your coach at Melbourne. How do you assess all this talk about him, about whether he's the right man for the job, and then obviously that people talk about Petrarca and Oliver last year, trying to leave certain players obviously they played with as well. What do you say about all that situation that's been happening the last year, really, about those three?
Oh, it's a big question. I think, I've got strong relationships with all those people, and probably see things through a little bit of a different lens when you're in at the football club and have the everyday interactions that I did with those people. Look, I think, but in saying that, I'm not at the club anymore. So it's the difference between being in the club and seeing things every day and how things play out is very different to being on the outside. And I think that's not to say that clubs and players shouldn't be criticised at times or be open to criticism. I think that's a healthy part of the game is punters or journalists or whoever it is making comment on the game. I think that's a healthy part of it. But you can never truly know what's going on within an organisation. I think Goody was always pretty good at being able to maintain a pretty even keel, even when things weren't going well. So, look, again, I probably don't know the ins and the outs of it right now, just having not been in that system for a bit.
That's fair. Now, obviously, head of development at the Bombers. How did that position, Ben, come about in the AFLW side?
So I finished up with footy and probably had a bit of a period of time where I was sort of investigating what was next and what roles might look like. I really did want to stay in women's footy. I love the space, and I think the ability to work with players on their development was something that I was particularly skill development, and their development in game understanding was something I felt like was a strength of mine that I would be able to bring to a group. I was really fortunate that, I was unfortunate in the first place in that, as I said before, Melbourne's AFLW program that I'd been part of for a few years as in a volunteer position. They've got an amazing coaching group that had stayed really settled and set. So they sort of didn't have a job for me necessarily going there, but Essendon were looking to expand out their coaching panel. It was sort of fortuitous timing that I was sort of looking for a position at that point. So I've really loved working with Natalie Wood. She's a teacher or an ex-teacher. She spent a lot of time in coaching women's football now. So I think even already I'm learning so much about how to coach and even how to best run a team from her, which is pretty amazing. And yeah, I've really enjoyed the start. The girls start pre-season next week, so we've got plenty of work to do before then to make sure everything's ready to go. But it's been great to have the last 2 months and sort of have optional sessions we've been running for the players. Particularly a whole bunch of the young players are keen as mustard and just want to get their hands on footies as much as possible. So it's been great to sort of get my hands dirty and really get into it.
Sure. So for people that don't know what the head of development type of role, what it kind of entails, what will your role entail, Ben, heading into this year?
Yeah, so it's working on the players' mainly football development in terms of skill development, running extras sessions, touch sessions in between sort of the main trainings. Obviously, I'll have fingerprints on the training sessions themselves, like the main training session, but a lot of the in-between stuff. And I suppose helping to be a conduit between the players and the coaches a little bit in terms of what the players are looking to work on and improve on so that they can lift their games to the next level. So, yeah, everyone's on the same page, working on the players' individual development plans, things like that. Our first and second year players' development program as well. I'll have some work to do in that space. So, it's covers a few different things compared to the men's program. Clearly, there's not as much resourcing in the women's game, so it's important that you're sort of putting your time into the right places. So we're still working that out and how my role's best used. It's a new role at the club, so still working through that with the coaches and with the GM of footy and working out how best that's utilised. But really learning a lot so far.
That's good. You mentioned too about some of the younger players in particular being keen as mustard, to quote what you just said then. Obviously, some of the girls have been playing in the VFLW competition the first 2 rounds of that season. What is your take on plays in terms of the matchups, in terms of like the alignment of the VFLW season? Would you feel like that should be closer to the AFLW season? Should it be further different in terms of the time length? In terms of the connection of both comps, would you prefer it to be with the AFLW season or very close to that? So for players that aren't in the starting team, have a proper competition to play in instead of scrimmage matches?
I would love to see the AFL and AFLW seasons be run concurrently at the same time. I think it makes a lot of sense. Obviously, the AFLW season is not as long, but I would love to see that come more into alignment, and then to be able to have players play at a second tier level when they're not playing in the AFL side. I think that's been one of the really difficult things for players who are non-selected players in the AFLW is that they've been playing in scrimmage matches made up of a whole bunch of players from a whole bunch of teams coming together. It just means you can't practice all the things that you need to develop as a player. Like, making sure that you've got the structures of the team down, playing with the same group of players every week. It's very different. And I'm sure any AFL men's player that you asked would talk about 2020 and the scrimmage matches that were going on in between AFL games, and they'd say that they'd never want to go back and do that again. And that's what the girls have been doing for years. So I think if we can find a way to align those seasons better so that you're able to have a second-tier competition, a genuine second-tier competition, I think that makes a lot of sense to me.
For sure. Do you feel like there could be that possibility where they talk about in the AFL side of things about the national reserves competition in terms of separating from the Williamstowns and the Port Melbournes and that? Do you feel like there would come to a point that may have to happen for the VFLW if they're not going to kind of work a way to kind of align them? Could that be a possibility since they're talking about it for the men's as well?
I think it's a different set of circumstances in the women's game. You've got some clubs in the VFLW, the very proud clubs, similar to I suppose the VFL men's program, but clubs like Darebin that have been part of growing the women's game. And I think without there are probably better people to ask this question honestly around how you'd sort of integrate that in and more closely integrate in AFLW with VFLW, people that have been part of that journey for longer than I have. But I think it'd be important to respect the history of some of those clubs that have been part of forming what now is the AFLW. Clubs like Darebin that have had a huge role to play in that, and the development of female talent and giving women a place to play highest level footy for a long period of time. Again, probably better people to ask than me that would be more knowledgeable on that. I think anything like that would have to be done with a lot of consultation with the right people.
For sure. And obviously, we mentioned about some players playing in the VFLW competition. That comes with good reward in terms of giving some players some games. But unfortunately, sometimes long-term injuries happen. Emily Goth, who obviously was a second-year player this year, unfortunately under ACL. And yesterday, the club announced that Bess Keeney won't play the season due to pregnancy, which is a good thing for her, and it's congratulations to her for that. But that leaves now 2 vacant spots. How much in the list spots, Ben, do you how much of a say or input do you have in like list management type decisions? And is there any particular type of players you feel the club should look at?
Yeah, really, really shattering for Goffey, who I'd really enjoyed watching her train. She trained really hard over the last sort of 6 or 8 weeks, or over the whole off-season period, really, and was probably set to have a big year as a good for us. So really disappointing for her. Exciting news for Bess. The pregnancy announcement, but I know, it was like, for her, but we've got to find a replacement for Bess Keeney, which is really hard to do. Real leader of the team, although she was still around. It's in terms of the list management, I don't have heaps to do with that. We've got people who are probably closer to that than I am. Having a key forward go out, obviously it's hard to replace a really strong key forward. I mean, maybe I'm a bit biased, but I think like we're rare animals, I suppose, to try and find a replacement for. So the people behind the scenes I know have been putting in extra hours, burning the midnight oil, trying to make these decisions, because it's really important we get those players in as soon as possible so they can join us for the pre-season proper.
For sure. I'm just going to throw a few names randomly out there. You don't really have to have your input on it, but I'm just going to throw a few names out there, and I just want to say, if it happens, I told you so to anyone listening. I feel like, obviously, with Amber Clark, obviously, it was a good pressure forward, a great runner that left the club as well. I feel like maybe a small forward option could also be a tuck. So maybe a Sophie Locke, who's someone I thought was unlucky to be let go by Hawthorn and is playing at Sandy at the moment. It could be one. And one player that I thought was really, if it's not a key forward, but a key defender, Jen Lawson-Tavern, who's just notched up 100 VFLW games, all-Australian probably level type player for the VFLW comp this year. I feel like they may be some names thrown up there at any club, but just thought I'd throw them up there. And if it happens, I'll take some credit.
Well, there you go. You can definitely take the credit if it happens, and maybe you'll have some clubs knocking on your door if they need an extra recruiter.
Yeah, that'd be nice. I mean, I watched it enough to kind of know what's across everything. But anyway, some players at the Bombers. You mentioned Goffey about how she was going to have a breakout year, and I thought she had a really good first year as well at the club. Who's some players at the Bombers that are kind of flying under the radar, or even in the competition as a whole, Ben, that you feel like don't get talked about as much as you feel they should?
Really good question. Who at the Bombers? It's probably, it's a few of the younger players that I'm really excited to see how they go this year. Amy Gaylor had a huge season last year as an 18-year-old first-year player coming in, and some of the roles that she was playing, she played forward, back, bit of mid, bit of everywhere, I think, and showed that she was quite capable overhead, but also on the ground. So I think, all things going well, I think I'm really excited to see what happens with her. A couple of other draftees that have come into the club have really put themselves forward. Well, I could name all of them. Grace Bellany has come in and as a high draft pick, potential to play forward or mid, big body player. who's had some real impact, played in round 2 of the VFL and kicked 2 goals. And an exciting prospect. Taya Chambers over from WA is a key position defender, really highly touted, some great skill level on her, and her footy IQ is really, really high. Holly Ridewood and Sophie Strong are the others who look like being great sort of running athletes, have some nice skill level as well. So, and Sophie Strong, I need to put an extra little exclamation point on her because she's a Tasmanian, so I've got to look after my fellow Tasmanians. But yeah, really tenacious player who goes after it and hits hard, despite being a smaller body. So yeah, some exciting young players I think what to look out for.
For sure, you mentioned. Definitely, especially some of those ones that you just mentioned then. And you speak of Tassie, Ben, so I'm going to ask you about Tassie now. As of this recording, just before we hit record, they officially announced that Todd Patterson, who obviously had been a long time at Melbourne AFLW list manager, is now going to be the Tassie list manager. Thoughts on that, and who do you feel their inaugural coach should be?
Oh, interesting question. As far as coach goes, I haven't given that too much thought, and you'd probably have more ideas than I would. But on Todd, a great person. Tasmanian, Tassie family, has a young family, but yeah, just a lovely person. He's really led the way in terms of AFLW, the recruiting space in AFLW, which is still absolutely a growing industry. Probably the recruiting in AFLW has been a lot of the time part-time, a part-time role, even in head recruiting roles. So he and Melbourne Footy Club really sort of led the way in terms of how to set up a recruiting program within AFLW, and so he's obviously got lots of experience in that sense, and a proven track record. So I think going back home, he'll just be a great addition to the team down there. But on the team as a whole, I'm really excited. I suppose I might have got my Tassie gear on today, don't I? Unknowingly, I just chucked these on. But I'm really excited to watch the Tassie team take shape. Obviously, I'll have a little bit of my heart still lives back at home. So I feel like I've got skin in the game, as it were, to just see how it all goes.
Yeah, for sure. You got your hat in about 4 teams now. The Bombers, you got North, you got Melbourne, and now Ben Tassie's in them.
Yeah. You try to ask my kids which team to go for, and I think they're jumping around a fair bit. It's actually quite nice to have a few teams that I watch with interest now.
For sure. Now, the AFLW length, Ben, obviously the season length, obviously people talk about, it's not enough, how everyone should play each other once. Where are you in that space? Because I feel like obviously they extended an extra game this year, which is great. And obviously, hopefully over time, it's gone to at least everyone plays each other once. So you eliminate the debate of, we didn't get to face them, they got an easy fixture and everything like this. Where are you with that, and hope where it can lead to?
Well, I hope it leads to a season that at least has every team playing each other once, sooner rather than later. I feel for the players. They've got such a long. I felt like pre-season was long for us when I was playing. They've been in pre-season a long time already, doing lots of running around the park and not much playing footy. So I'd love them to get to that point. I think it's one of those things with the AFL where if they want things to happen, it'll happen. So it's. I think it just comes from, putting pressure on them to make those decisions and make them happen faster. And one of the things is sort of having more people go along and watch and support these games. And I think when you take into account, it's not just about the women's game or showing support. I think when you take into account like the broader social impacts, kind of like I was talking about before, of supporting the women's game, it's giving opportunities to young girls and young women to have the experiences of being valued in a sports sense. and being valued in wider society. It's the links are really really clear for me, at least. I think it's something that we need to put more emphasis on, and showing your support for women's sport and women's footy. It goes beyond just showing support to those at the highest level. You're supporting everyone, everyone around you, and giving more people that experience of belonging, the experience of fun and joy that you get in being part of a club and being part of an experience of being in a sporting team. So I think more people deserve to have that opportunity. And like you said before, going to the AFLW is a great experience. Take your kids along, have a good time. Often it is, it might not be that you can get all the way out to a St Kilda game or whatever it is if you're, Moorabbin, but there are games all around the place. So find one that's close to you. Take the kids along, show your support, and it's a great time.
For sure, definitely. I mean, being from Geelong, and it always sometimes can be, people always ask me, but you're going to Melbourne all the time, you're going up and down so far, going to, say, a Windy Hill or a Moorabbin or whatever, but I've just kind of made that a part of it. It's like, no, well, I've gotten used to it so much now. So technically it would take about a 45-minute train ride to get to Southern Cross, so Marvel, Stadium, whatever you want to call it, and then you go to these other grounds, and I just try and think of it as like, no, it's 45 minutes, and then I'm having a little break, but not really, and then it's like, okay, Moorabbin's 25-minute train station from there. All right. So I kind of try and think of it like that. It's part of the routine now. The only ground, though, I haven't gone to, and it's not great with train lines, so that's not my fault, is Casey Fields. It's probably the only one. I've even gone to Frankston, and that's, you're talking about travel, Jesus Christ. That's about an hour from Southern Cross on the train. So that's an extra hour on top of the 45 plus the wait time in between. So that I've done twice. But Casey Fields the only one, Ben, that I haven't gone to yet. The rest I have.
Yeah, I'm not going to argue with you on the fact that Casey Fields is a decent trek. I did that the last 4 years of my AFL career. So, yes, it is a bit of a trek out. But there are people who live out there that I'm sure would appreciate being able to support footy and have that close to home as well. So.
Sure. Now, I've got 2 questions left for you, Ben, so I really appreciate coming on. Now, you mentioned Mason Wood. I'm a St Kilda fan. Obviously, he was kind of a whipping boy, I thought, Mason Wood at the Roos, and he's now a cult hero. He's got his own chance, Mason Wood. It's great to see. I'm sure you love seeing that. And his career changed from at North, which was solid, but obviously was a whipping boy back then. But at Saints, as a delisted free agent, he's definitely not playing like someone that was at that position. He's just killing it, part of the leisure group, and one of our regular players and main players up in the forward line and on the wing when he's playing there.
Yeah. I've loved that Mason's made a great career for himself. He deserves it. He works really hard at his game, and we had a really nice relationship when he was at North Melbourne. So I've loved watching his development. I probably don't watch as much men's footy as I used to. But whenever I catch a Saints game and watch him playing, he seems to be racking up the touches and making good things happen. He's a good finisher in front of goal. Usually, he occasionally he sprays the odd one. Oh, mate, yes. Don't tell him I said that though. He's a really determined person and has really put everything he could into his AFL career. So I think whenever it is he finishes up, hopefully he still plays another 8 or 10 years. But whenever he finishes up, I think he will have got everything out of his body and out of his career that he possibly could have. So I'm stoked for Mace.
For sure. Now, you mentioned too about missing some of the gettable ones, and trust me, he's still done that this year. But he's got some amazing goals from towards the boundary or long-range kicks, and his marking, though, his leap for the guy who's not the height of you or a key forward, an undersized key forward, like a third tall. And I feel like Tim Membry's the same, but his overhead marking is bloody awesome. So many pack marks he makes, and it just makes it so easy. Well, for him, it does sometimes.
Oh, yeah. Preaching to the converted there. I saw that plenty of times at the Kangas, and getting that opportunity. And he has always been such a good runner too. So I think
that too.
Where he can sort of get up and down the ground really plays to his strengths. So, good on him.
Definitely. Now, the last one, I appreciate you coming on, Ben, is obviously a bold call in the AFLW competition this year. Ben, it can relate to Essendon, it can relate to any individuals. What is your bold call in the AFLW for this season?
Oof. Bold call. I'll probably have to keep it Essendon related. We'll make top 4.
There we go. Yeah, that's a bold one. I mean, you're making around the finals last year, so it's not an unrealistic thing. And hey, a bold call's a bold call for a reason, isn't it?
Well, I don't think it's particularly bold even now I think about it. I'm loving sort of working with the players, and I think if we get all the right pieces together, Bonnie Too Good missed a whole lot of last year.
Yes.
So we get a few of those big name players back and playing well. I think sky's the limit for our team. So really excited to watch that happen.
For sure, I can't believe we go 1 hour and not mention Bonnie Too Good. What a terrific player she is, and dare I say it, she's too good. It's in her name, and it's legit.
She is. It's one of the great names in football.
Yeah, absolutely. There's plenty of good ones, including Bonnie's name. Ben, I really appreciate you coming on. Well done on your AFL career. Obviously, I met. Actually, you probably won't remember this, but I met you last year. We spoke about your career and what a good career you had. So I appreciate you coming on here as well, having chats in general. I've spoken to you a few times off stream, so I really do appreciate it, Ben. And good luck at the role of the Bombers, and hopefully for your sake, they can lift that cup at the end of the year.
No worries, Cooper. Thanks, mate.
No, thank you.